And so the real big test for product market fit for couriers is when you actually remove the hourly, guarantees, and you're paying them on a per order basis. Are your couriers sticking with the platform, or are they churning, right? And if they stick with the platform, that means your platform is providing them with sufficient levels of earnings, and of course that in the UX and everything works as they would expect to their level. And that's like the ultimate test of product market fit. If you remove the guarantees and all of a sudden you see a bunch of couriers churning, well, definitely you haven't built product market fit into your marketplace.
Ciao, io sono Marco Imperato e questo è il podcast di Product Heroes. Product Heroes è l'ecosistema per chi fa product management in Italia. In questo episodio parleremo di dai primi indicatori di product market fit a una crescita da hyperscale con Glovo, le metriche per tenere in equilibrio supply e demand in un marketplace. Appunto, sempre Glovo, dal ruolo di CPO a founder, quindi come disinstallare vecchie convinzioni e far crescere la tua nuova startup. E poi dove l'AI crea vero valore e dove invece resta un nice to have. In compagnia di Bartek Kunowski, ex CPO di Glovo per 8 anni e adesso co-founder e CEO di Ara. Bartek sarà alla Product Heroes Conference 2025. Per cui se vuoi fare due chiacchiere con Bartek, vuoi ascoltarlo, vuoi sederti a un round table con lui o vuoi pranzare con Bartek, sei ancora in tempo per prendere il biglietto. Trovi il link in descrizione. La conferenza sarà il 9 e il 10 ottobre 2025 a Milano. Sono previste 1000-1200 persone e restano gli ultimi biglietti. Hey Bartek, welcome to Product Heroes.
Hey Marco, thanks for having me.
So happy you are here. We are finally doing it. Mm-hmm. For people who are listening, I live in Palermo and today is Santa Rosalia, is a big party in Palermo, so everything is closed. So I'm recording from my house, but I'm just counting the hours to start the conversation. So please, Bartek, start by tell our audience who you are. So what's your story?
Yeah, my story. So thanks. So I grew up in Canada, in Toronto. I studied computer science there at university, and right after university I was an engineer, so I started life programming. My first job I actually was quite lucky to get a job at Amazon. This was more than 20 years ago. So I worked at Amazon first as a programmer for a few years. At then product management still didn't really exist. I think it was just starting as a profession. I certainly hadn't heard about it, but I knew I wanted to work more with people as opposed to just coding all day. And I took a little bit of time off to kind of think about what I wanted to do next. And then I moved to Europe and I started doing more of kind of like project management, leading engineering teams, but working with customers and so on and so forth. So I worked in Ireland for a while. And then I ran my first company I started, which was actually an outsourcing company. And so the idea there was to help software development companies augment their engineering teams with more engineers and help them build out their products. And then I made the realization that actually I wanted to be building my own things as opposed to, helping others build what they want to build. And that's where I ended up in product. So I ended up in Spain, in Barcelona, and I joined a social network here, which most likely you've never heard of in Italy, but it was huge in Spain. So most countries, they had like their homegrown social networks, before Facebook took over the world. And in Italy, it was called 20. And that was my first real full product management role. I started as a senior product manager and then got into like a GPM type role. And that was exciting because it was definitely at the time the most forward thinking, tech company in Spain. There was a lot of Americans there, who came from California to start it and stuff. So it was a really, really cool culture. And after that, I joined Glovo. So Glovo, for sure, in Italy, it's one of our top markets. And I was super early in Glovo, employee number 10. So I joined pre-product market fit. The founders brought me in to lead the product engineering team. And so I was there for 8 years. Started really, really early when, we were just operating in Barcelona, doing something like 20 or 30 orders a day. And I left post-acquisition because Glovo was acquired by Delivery Hero. When I left, we were doing 20 million orders a month and operating in about 25 or so countries. Everything from Morocco to Kazakhstan and a lot of countries in between. And so I left Glovo a couple of years ago, and now I'm on my new adventure, which is called Ara. And with Ara, again, it's another moonshot project. And so our goal is to replace video conferencing meetings, or majority of video conferencing meetings that happen within companies, with a completely different approach, which is a lot more efficient. And it's basically moving to asynchronous video meetings. And so yeah, we're in the beginnings of that journey, but it's quite exciting.
You will make a lot of developers very happy with Ara, because usually, tech people usually hate meetings. They have to do it, but they don't like them very much. And about 20, actually, I spoke 3-4 people in Spain, and was quite a big thing. In Italy, we had something very different. So it looks like everyone started at Matrix, that was an Italian company, but doing emails and rings for mobile phones.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, so you joined Glovo in 2015, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
Then people pre-product market fit.
Yep.
How things were going, and how did you find product market fit? How did you understand that you were entering product market fit?
Yeah.
There were any specific KPIs or other things?
Yep. Great. So there's a long answer, and the reason why is because Glovo is a three-sided marketplace. And so anytime you have a marketplace, you have completely different users on each side of the marketplace, and the definition of product market fit is actually different for each side. And typically the way it works with marketplaces, in order to be successful, is, well, first of all, marketplaces need to be balanced, right? If you have one side of the marketplace that has too much demand over the other one, then the whole thing falls apart. And it's even trickier when you have three sides, because all three need to be in balance. And the way that typically you build such marketplaces is you fake certain sides of the marketplace to build up one side to a significant amount of volume, and then you can work on the other sides. So in Glovo, the three sides of the marketplace first were the users, the people who are making the orders, like you or I. You have the app, you make an order, you order some food, or you order something from the pharmacy. Then you had the couriers. These are people on their bicycles and motos who are delivering the products. And then you have the merchants, which could be a restaurant, or like I said, it could be a pharmacy or a supermarket, or different kinds of stores. Let me start off with the couriers. So in order to raise the marketplace, what we did was we initially would pay guarantees to the couriers. So basically we would guarantee the courier a certain amount of money per hour, regardless of whether they got orders or not. And the amount was different depending on the city and the market, but basically we would pay them these hourly guarantees. And that way you would ensure that you had enough couriers ready to take orders. So if a customer placed an order, that they would get it delivered in a reasonable amount of time. And so the real big test for product market fit for couriers is when you actually remove the hourly guarantees, and you're paying them on a per order basis. Are your couriers sticking with the platform, or are they churning, right? And if they stick with the platform, that means your platform is providing them with sufficient levels of earnings, and of course that in the UX and everything works as they would expect to their level. And that's like the ultimate test of product market fit. If you remove the guarantees and all of a sudden you see a bunch of couriers churning, well, definitely you haven't built product market fit into your marketplace. So that's the couriers.
Were they earning more with the guaranteed, or were they earning less, or the same?
Yeah, there's no clear answer, but generally you want them to earn at least equal, if not more, right? Because obviously if you are earning more and all of a sudden we change the system and they're making a lot less, you're going to have a lot of unhappy couriers. So you basically need to be able to equal the earnings on average. Okay. And then on the marketplace side, so the big challenge obviously is just signing a partner. Once they're already onboarded, like, yes, churn could always happen, but that wasn't the big product market fit signal. So the moment that you really feel the product market fit on the partner side is when you go from a almost fully outbound sales model to a lot more inbound. So at the very, very beginning, you have a sales team which are knocking on doors of restaurants and pharmacies, getting rejected, banging their head against the wall, trying to get a partner to sign, finally get a partner on the platform. Great. At some point, though, things start turning and you start getting partners reaching out to you, to Glovo, saying, hey, I saw one of my competitors is on your platform. They seem to be doing really, really well. I've used the product myself. This is super cool. How do I get onto your platform, right? And once you start seeing a significant amount of inbound, then okay, we've cracked it on the merchant side, right? Because all of a sudden, we're getting a lot of, it's way easier, obviously, to sell and onboard when you have inbound traffic versus outbound. So that was like the really big signal on the merchant side. And on the user side, so these again, customers who place orders, at the very beginning of Glovo, we had a lot of excitement from early adopters because it was definitely a very innovative and very cool product, right? You could order, this was 2015, where the only types of on-demand services that existed were food delivery services. And right in 2015 in Glovo, you could already order everything from, alcohol late at night to pharmacy to toys to headphones if you lost them. And so it was quite an innovative service, and we got a lot of excitement from early adopters. But the moment you had product market fit was when you saw the kind of majority of users, so not early adopters, but kind of like the typical average person using Glovo, on a regular basis. That's where we said, okay, we have product market fit.
Okay, one of the first things that struck me the most when I started using Glovo was the possibility to pick up something somewhere and make them to bring it to you. I used it once, and to me it was magic, because I was at the birthday, one of my friends. Obviously, we forgot the present at our place, but my parents were at our house, so we used Glovo to have this delivery. But when I was doing the thing that actually worked very well, was like 20 minutes, I had the present in my hand. You weren't make any money on that, I think. It's just like for marketing purpose.
Yeah, I think it was more, marketing sounds, I use the word magic, and that's the exact same word that I use when I talk about it. I think it's incredible when you could build a product, whether it's consumer or a business product, where you create magic moments for users. I'm pretty sure you've told that story a dozen times or maybe more to different people. So not only does Glovo end up having a special place in your heart, basically, as it's a tech product, but you also probably have told the story several times, even though that 99% of your orders are probably hamburgers and groceries and all this kind of stuff. It's pretty amazing to be able to build a product where every once in a while you really make that magic moment for users. And Glovo was a product where we're able to achieve that in different ways. You gave one example. Another really good example is parents. I don't know if you have young kids, but the ability to, for example, order some kind of medication in the middle of the night when your child is sick and you ran out of it, or even something as trivial as running out of diapers. It's a real problem, when you actually realize, oh geez, I don't have any diapers and I'm in a rush for something. And Glovo as a product was able to create these magic moments for users, not with every order, but maybe one every 100 moments. But then the users really thought about Glovo a little bit differently than the other apps that they had on their phone. And it's one of the things that we look at, even when we're building a B2B product like Ara, we're looking for these kind of magic moments where the user says, "Wow, this is really cool," and it really does have a great impact on word of mouth referrals and user retention.
Talking about magic, I think there is something special in Glovo's design. What I say is like, it looks like alive. When I use, every other delivery platform, it's just like an ERP. You order a pizza, the pizza get delivered, everything is fine. While when you use Glovo, it looks like the app is alive. When you do these things, there is vibration, there is this thing, there's the circle, you can move things. How did you come to this, kind of design for a very normal and basic delivery app? Because it could be a list of things. You do order, you search, everything.
Yeah, if you think about Glovo, it's a very transactional, or any platform like this, it's a very transactional thing, right? You pick up the app, you click a few buttons, and you get things done. So for us, two things were really critical for the consumer app. The first one, and by far is the most important one, is simplicity. Right? If you think about like what we're doing anyone can get on their bicycle or walk out the door, or get in their car and drive to a store and get something, right, and buy it. They can do it, right? Or there's other apps out there, specific apps to certain. There's an app for ordering flowers. There's an app you can go to a website, figure it out, register, and do it. And so what is the real value proposition of Glovo? The real value proposition of Glovo is we say we put all of these different services into one platform and we make it ridiculously easy for you to do it. So simplicity is at the core foundation of the value proposition. So making the user interface also extremely simple and easy for users, where I just like open up my app, click a couple buttons, and I get something delivered, is fundamental to what we do. And it creates this magic moment experience, right? If you every single time you have to go in there and type a whole bunch of stuff and it's very confusing, it's not going to achieve its purpose. But then we said, well, what if we could take it a little bit further? It's not only are we making it super simple, but what if we could actually make it delightful as well, right? That was the big thing, right? So not only do we want to make it simple, but we want to make it delightful for the users. And then it comes down to very small little touches on the user interface, where as the user is using it, they actually feel they're not just transacting with a very kind of very transactional interface, but they're actually it's delightful. They enjoy doing it. And so that was kind of our part of our kind of design philosophy from the very very early days, and I think we achieved it quite well. It's really strange. We would do at Glovo every once in a while. We would go into it was more of our marketing team would do this, but they would go and they would actually outsource to a third party to speak to users. I don't know, in Peru, for example, they would say, hey, what are compared to all Glovo versus Uber Eats versus all these other competitors that are out there, why are the reasons why you use Glovo? And then what are the reasons why you would use, the competitor, right? And then of course that was a kind of a really good kind of market competitor analysis to understand like where are our gaps, or at least what the users believe that other competitors do better than us, and then what are our kind of like real strengths. And time again, it was really surprising, one of the top 3 reasons why users chose to use Glovo versus another competitor was the app. Which again, it feels very, very strange because it's a delivery service, right? It should be, and there are things like pricing, delivery speed, and a whole bunch of other really important things that, of course, users care about. The selection, of merchants that you have in the app. But the app always came in the top 3.
You know what? I was talking with Sasha a couple of years ago after they acquired the Palermo's company, was Social Food, and I was very grateful to you guys, because that company, I knew the founders very well, had all the biggest and most famous restaurants, but the app was like a nightmare. So actually when you switched from Social Food to Glovo, I started to order like 5-6x times more, even for grocery. Even for things that I wasn't supposed to buy because it was just a delivery service. And so right now, the choice is not like, we don't have Uber Eats, we have, I don't remember that, we have Deliveroo and one other. It's not like we order, we use Glovo. It's the opposite. So we start from Glovo to order something. If the restaurant is not there, okay, we choose another one. So it's like up first right now. So very interesting story. A couple of questions on Glovo, then we will switch to Ara, because I'm super curious on what you're building right now, what you're gonna tell us to the conference. So you codified Glovo's product principles in a public document, and you basically start by yourself and then grew the team to 100 product managers. Which principle turned out to be the hardest to keep alive as the team grew so fast?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I wrote this document. So the first question is, we had 3 and then later on 4 product principles. I like to keep lists short. The first question is, why do you even have product principles in a company? Why? And for me it was that there are certain behaviors and there's certain guidelines that you would like product managers to keep in mind that aren't coming out naturally in the organization for whatever reason. Okay? And so you need to kind of observe how your organization is functioning. Each organization is different. It's a different context. And see, are there certain kind of principles that you just see that maybe there are some other conflicting things in the company, or they're just not happening naturally, and you just need to give your product organization an extra kind of strength to stand behind these things. Okay, it's not to come up with every single great product lesson, because there's lots of them. And so I observed a few things that I thought for the context of Glovo really important. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you asked me specifically which one do I think was the one that I really need to push on the most, and it was the first one on the list, which is building from a blank canvas. And so the idea of building from a blank canvas is that every time you come across a new product problem that you need to solve, or an opportunity, first really understand the why behind it, and then once you really understand the why behind it, then sit down with your team, whether it's like with your design, your engineers, and really from first principles try to innovate an amazing solution for it. Whether it's when you're focused on something on the UI or completely back office product to make a difference, is to really try to come up with something you really believe is going to be the best solution for it. And the reason why I wrote this is because there's a completely another way of doing product, which is let's just benchmark a bunch of competitors out there, choose which solution I think is the best, and implement that. Copy and paste. And the reality is that I think in Europe, we're talking about Europe. I like I said, I started my career at Amazon, which was definitely one of these places where it was all about innovation. We were at the cutting edge of everything, right? Web services started at Amazon, including a whole bunch of other things. So I was very much used to a culture where you start with a problem and you innovate a solution. You don't really care what the competitors are doing because you want to be number one. And the reality is, if you're just kind of copying and pasting, you're never going to be number one. At best, you'll be number two. At best. And I think in Europe, I think maybe there's a bit of a success with Rocket Internet. To be honest, I haven't gone too deep into like why it is, but I find culturally, people are just a lot more leaning towards hey, let's just see what some American is doing, and we'll try to do the same thing. And I guess you can build some kind of businesses, but if you ever want to be number one in the world in anything, you just can't follow that strategy. And I really wanted Glovo to be something special, something completely different. Not just, like you said, there's a whole bunch of these transactional products out there that deliver whatever. And yeah, it would have been easier just to say, hey, let's just do what these Deliveroo guys are doing and call it a day. And so this is really, really important to me, and I really wanted to make sure that was part of the product organization. I think people get excited about such an opportunity, but you have to realize Glovo, it's a big company. It's not just product people. You have a lot of people, for example, on the business side of things, who are also adding a ton of value to the company, moving really, really quickly. Sometimes they see, for example, the product is not living up to what it needs to do in certain areas, and their natural thing is, hey, just build whatever the other guy's doing. Like let's not spend time doing any kind of experimenting or thinking or brainstorming. Just like do whatever X is doing. And so you always have this natural force that's coming from the rest of the business, is like, hey, product people, just copy X and let's move on to the next thing. And so it was really, really important to kind of empower the product organization to say, what?
How do you find that?
Well, the product principle.
No. So, I mean, when a sales guy tells you, okay, let's do this now because we need to do it, or from an operational standpoint.
In the end, which is not an easy answer to give you, but part of the answer is you need to empower your product organization with the confidence that like they're able to experiment and try something from zero, and sometimes things fail and some things go better. And starting with a product principle is a great place, right? Because at least they can lean on that. They know, hey, Bartek supports me in this way of working, right? Because if they don't even have that, then they feel like they're kind of on their own. So I think that's the first step, and of course, being vocal about it myself. That said, it's a fine line, huh? I've also, I put it there because I saw such an enormous force coming from the other side. But you can also imagine other examples. I've also seen situations in my career where like a product manager or a product team is literally trying to reinvent the bicycle and wasting a ton of time, a ton of cycles, and a ton of engineering time, ending up in a solution where you just like, we could have just gone straight there instead of wasting 4 months running A/B tests and so on and so forth. Again, it's a very fine line, right? Because everyone thinks their solution is correct and so on and so forth. But this was one that, at least for me, was quite important. At the moment in ADA, for example, I wouldn't add that product principle, which we don't have it, because I have the background that I have, and my co-founder Jordi, he spent a bunch of time in Silicon Valley, so both of us are super, like we're here to reinvent, invent something completely new, and we're not looking at anyone. We're really kind of building from scratch. So I in my current company, I wouldn't add that as a product principle, because it's just, culturally, it's not an issue for us.
Okay, switching to ARA. So you recently moved from a CPO role in a very famous company, so everyone knew what Glovo was, everyone knew who Bartek was. You were an executive with teams, big budgets, to a founder of something that was non-existent like a few years ago. So you're building something from scratch, from zero. Which personal assumption did you have to change to start again from zero? And the question on top of that is that, what did you push to start again from zero? What gave you the motivation?
What gave me the motivation? Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so 2 questions. So I think the first one, I think as I was scaling in Glovo and getting bigger, one of the nice things that I came across was I discovered that, as the company grows, I'm able to hire more and more specialists for different roles. So, as you came up, things get more and more complicated. And at some point you're like, yeah, we'll hire a UX research specialist. Like, wow, that's amazing. We have someone just purely specialized and has a lot of experience and it can just lead this whole area. Or I remember for me, it was mind-blowing when we hired a first person to run product operations. All of a sudden I'm going to have someone who's going to take care of the product planning process and, and a whole bunch of other, things that I had a huge headache over. And so, when scaling up and getting a larger company, that was one of the really, really nice things, to be able to hire specialists. And so now going to a startup, going back to ground zero, you have no specialists for anything. And so that's one of the things that very, very quickly you just have to you realize it on day one, like you don't have specialists for anything. I mean, it's true, you can sometimes, and we've done it a little bit, you can kind of contract someone externally for a specialist for a small little thing if you really, really need a deep dive in something. But the reality is, you're a generalist and you're working with a bunch of generalists. So that's the big change. And I think the question, the second question is, why go from such a large, organization or a role of responsibility in a large company to a startup? And I think there's no one answer. I think there's some people who are really happy working in very large organizations for the entire career, and it brings them a lot of fulfillment. For me, I think I stayed a long time in Glovo just because there was a big delta, just because of the growth of the company. So my job every year was changing significantly. But at some point, companies, they kind of have this S curve, right? And at some point you kind of get to the top of the S where, it's really about optimization and, very small little, which in the end, in a P&L in the bottom line are still big numbers, but percentage wise, there's small changes on the product and small changes on the business. And that's where I just I'm not as excited in that part, right? So I really like more of this lower part of the S and the big climb versus the kind of smoothing out at the end. And so for me, it was very, very clear that I really wanted to get back to the beginnings and start something new.
So you told me that this wasn't the first time in which you are building a company. You built a company before for outsourcing, if I'm not wrong. Was this the first time in which you are building a tech product from zero?
No, I've tried. So Glovo was quite early. Of course, it was about 6 months in, so it wasn't from zero. I had tried at different points in time to try new, lots of startup ideas. I had a on-demand
side projects.
Yes, well, yeah. In between 20 and Glovo, I was experimenting with lots of different. We built on-demand moto and car washing service with an app. We build like a video interviewing solution. So I've had experience building and failing, building and failing really quickly. I think that's a skill as well. Yeah, so I've had a bit of experience there as well.
So all the literature on the product management usually is about post-product market fit. Right now you are in the pre-product market fit, kind of product market fit. You see it, maybe it's not there. So what's changing in your day-to-day job?
Between being someone who's working on something that already has strong product market fit versus...
Pre-product market fit compared to post-product market fit.
Yeah, okay, so pre-product, well, it depends really how pre you are. Pre-product market fit, you're really optimizing running learning. That's what you need to optimize. So everything you do is all about learning, whether it's learning about customer, getting insights, trying to launch things. If you're launching something and if you're doing anything that's not leading to a significant amount of learning about the world, about a problem, whatever it is, then you're wasting your time in pre-product market fit. So that's the main thing that you optimize for. Post-product market fit, you've learned something about a world, you understand a problem, and you already understand what is the core solution that is gonna solve them. And then you start entering a different phase where like, okay, well now then you already have probably some specific KPIs set up for your product, and then you have to figure out like what are the most important KPIs to grow this thing and to turn it into a business. And then it's all about like, okay, what do I build so that I can improve these KPIs. But pre-product market fit, it's all about learning about the world and learning about problems and trying to find solutions that match those.
Okay, so we talk about what ARA does. Actually, maybe we didn't talk about what ARA specifically does. So can you explain like 1 minute what ARA does and why?
Yeah, so let me just tell you about the problem real quick. So I mean, organizations, companies, we spend a ton of time in meetings, either in real meetings or video conference meetings, which are becoming more and more popular, obviously. And meetings serve a purpose, right? They're very valuable. This is where teams collaborate, they discuss ideas, they take decisions and action items. But we spend a huge percentage of our work week in meetings, and it's a huge inefficiency. And so what we are doing at ARA is reimagining how we run meetings to make them radically more efficient. And we do this, the big idea behind ARA is moving meetings to asynchronous mode. So as opposed to having to align calendars and do everything in a synchronous mode, we run meetings asynchronously. And that leads to a really huge improvement in efficiency. There's kind of three main levers that it does. So the first one is basically you don't have this scheduling gap from like the moment that you want to meet or either informally or formally with a group of people to discuss a topic. Typically in a company, you open up your calendar and you schedule something sometimes, and depending on the size of the company and the complexity of people's calendar, sometimes it's days or even weeks in advance you have to wait. And all that time in between is wasted, right? Because whatever decisions are going to come out of that meeting, whatever action items, whatever it is, basically you have to wait to the meeting. That's a huge inefficiency gap that happens over and over again in companies. And so ARA actually reduces that to zero. So basically you record you start your ARA meeting with your group of people, you make your first contribution, and the meeting kicks off right away. And a lot of times it actually finishes even before the synchronous meeting would have happened. So that's kind of the first one. The second one is the actual time dedicated to the meeting itself. So in a synchronous meeting, let's say it's an hour long, all the participants dedicate an hour to meeting. And with ARA, because it's asynchronous and we've built a whole bunch of product features enabled actually by AI, allows people to participate in meetings in a lot more efficient way, especially when consuming content. And so you actually end up spending, if you measure it, less time in the ARA meeting than in the synchronous meeting. So not only did you finish it earlier, you actually spent less time in the meeting. And finally, teams that move to ARA, they actually start defragmenting their calendar, because now, previously you have to have all these synchronization with other people's calendars, and this leads to a very fragmented calendar, which is really, really bad for deep work. And so when teams move to ARA, people actually gain control of their time again and it allows them to actually, just work more efficiently in whatever their role is. So yeah, Ara is a platform for running asynchronous meetings. We're focusing on tech companies to start with, and it works with probably if you work at a typical tech company, you open up your calendar, probably 90% of the meetings there in your calendar right now work better than Ara. So everything from stand-ups to one-on-ones to design reviews, product demos, complex code reviews, the list goes on and on.
Okay. Just to make things simpler, but I'm not sure if what I'm saying is right or not. It looks like it's a email thread, but on video. Kind of, no? Because you send an email, but not email like with video. You wait for contribution, people can join. They can comment, not with text, but with video. So the question is, yes, meetings are a problem. Are something obviously you're dealing with and can be very successful. But aren't we risking to create another email flows? Because another problem is that I think with Slacks and emails, there's a lot of communication inflow. So Ara would be another channel of inflows. Yes, it's asynchronous, so emails are better than meetings. It's video, so it's faster. I think you can use AI to transcript, to reply, and do a lot of stuff.
So the reality is, let me answer your question with two answers. So first of all, we use a lot of tools today. Teams use a lot of tools to collaborate, right? So you mentioned email, you mentioned some kind of instant messaging like Slack. We also use documents, right? So we write Notion pages, we write Google Docs and Sheet. Maybe we use a Figma file to communicate a design. There's lots and lots of things. So I think we are used to using multiple tools to collaborate with each other, and so the question is, do you want to introduce yet another tool? And so the big question there, does it actually make your job and your job and the job of your team, more productive and more efficient? And with the Ara is a definite yes. What we are actually doing is replacing what you would normally do in a video conferencing call with an Ara, right? So instead of, for example, doing some status update meeting in a video call where everyone has to join for example, Zoom or Google Meets, whatever your video conferencing software is you're using at your company, you would use it Ara. So we're actually replacing things, and actually most teams, a lot of times they'll stop using the video conferencing tools.
One last question on Ara. Yesterday I was talking with the guy about venture capital and the reduction of cost for software products with vibe coding and stuff. But we were talking about the acquisition cost that is not decreasing, it's the opposite, because it's more and more difficult to acquire new users. Both B2B and B2C channels are getting saturated, a lot of content. So how are you gonna get the first 1,000 users? What's your strategy? Let's say go to market, product-led growth, call it however you want.
Yeah, so we have basically three. And most startups, most tech companies have kind of three. So there's the product-led growth side of things, and with Ara, the great thing is Ara has very strong network effects. It's a product for meetings, for teams, for communication. So it just naturally has a very strong network effect. And of course, we've built into the product a whole bunch of growth loops, starting with the most basic ones. You create a new meeting and you can invite people in your organization just by typing in their email address, and Ara will automatically send them an email, and you see like an animation image of the person who's inviting you already speaking, and so you're like, wow, this person's starting a meeting, they're talking about something, I need to hear them, and that pulls you into Ara. That's like the most fundamental growth loop, but we have a few other ones that we've built or are going to build further. So there's a lot of product-led growth. At some point, we'll also have intercompany. Right now, we're focused internally for internal meetings within an organization, but we'll also have in between organizations as well at some point. And then we have inbound and outbound. The great thing about Ara is we're solving a problem that pretty much every organization has. It's a pain point that pretty much anyone in an organization can relate to, and we're going about it in a very innovative way. And I think anytime you're solving a problem that people have and you have a completely innovative approach to it, that's great for inbound, in the sense, as long as you talk about it externally, whether it's in a podcast like this, or you write a LinkedIn post about it, or go to a conference and talk about it. It's a great way for people to then, after you do that, people write you and say, hey, this looks super interesting. I want to learn more. How do I get my team to sign up for it? And then we're also experimenting with outbound. And so this is kind of, there's a whole bunch of tools out there now that people are using to kind of automate outbound. And then the key thing there is you need to really, know who is your target, your ICP, and you do that through experimentation, obviously. Who's the person who's really, really interested in what you're doing, and then just leveraging a lot of these tools in an efficient way, in a smart way.
Okay, talking about the future of product management, that is the big question we ask ourselves every single day. Which skills do you think are going to be the main skills every product manager has to have, not to thrive, but to survive in the next 5 years?
I think that's a very bleak way of looking at things. My answer is actually, it's the same I've always given, and it's probably more true today than ever. So if you think about a business in an organization, it's comprised of lots of domains kind of working together, right? So you have there's the technical engineering domain, you have the UX design domain, you have understanding data and pulling insights from data that you have. There's understanding how go-to-market works, how are you bringing in and onboarding new users. You have just understanding the business metrics, how does the top line, bottom line relate to each other, all the different drivers of the business. You have understanding how the legal things work within the company, finance. I mean, the list goes on and on. You can keep talking about it. These are all different domains. Forget about product management. I think if you are a person that has, of course, you're not a specialist, but you have nice depth in a lot of these domains, and you're able to actually connect the dot between these things within a business, then you're very valuable to the business, because actually there's not that many people. If you take a typical company and you say, show me the people here that can connect, 5 or 6 of the domains within this business in a way where they can come up with ideas or solutions, or see how one area can leverage something else in the other area. There's not that many people can do it or have that skill, have the depth of knowledge in different areas. And so if you can develop that skill of connecting, and also deep enough expertise in each of the areas, of course not being the expert, because you'll have experts in all the areas, that's extremely valuable for a business. And I think today it was true in the past, it's true today, and it's going to be true in the future. And you can call it product management, you call it whatever you want, but I think having that skill is extremely valuable. And now with all the advances in AI, you just have a lot more tools to allow you to get more knowledge and insights in the different areas. So having that in mind, I think is the advice that still makes sense.
But how do you develop these skills?
Well, first of all, you have to kind of identify what are the domains that you probably have some to start with. I started, I studied computer science, right, in university. So, I started with one of them. I think I took university. I took one design UX course. So I started some initial basic insights. Other ones you develop through reading books. I don't know whether it's, you're interested in business, so you might read some books. You might take some courses. Sometimes you can just dive in and try it, whatever it is. So I don't know. Let's just say you don't know anything about finance and accounting, right? I mean, there's different ways of acquiring it, right? You can try working, or next time try to get a project where you work alongside someone who's working in that area. You can read something. You can start a business and try doing accounting yourself. It's more about just identifying the fact that I want to learn about a specific domain, and then actually making the time and the effort to do so. I think that you have more tools today than ever. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question for you, Bartek. What's the best piece of advice you've received from a colleague or a mentor?
When I first started Amazon, actually, I first started as an intern. I was still in university, and we had these. There was probably 20 of us from my university, and we once a week we had this thing at Amazon called the brown bag lunch, where basically you would have lunch. You'd bring your lunch in a brown bag, and you'd sit with one of the Amazon executives, like super senior people. They have to have like a 45-minute lunch with all the interns and like a casual conversation. And one of the brown bag lunches we had was with a guy named Rick Dalzell. He was one of the top guys at Walmart, which Jeff Bezos then convinced to join this crazy thing called Amazon. And he was a COO. So he was Jeff Bezos' right-hand man for many, many years, and was responsible for a lot of the growth of Amazon in the early days. Anyways, we had a brown bag lunch with Rick, and he started the session, he going around the table asking everyone, a number of questions. And one of the questions, he asked us to answer was he would say, "Give me one question that I can answer for you." And a lot of the interns would ask questions about, about the business. And I thought, well, these are all really easy for him. We're interns. We're asking him super, super basic questions. I'm going to be the smart guy. And I said to him, Rick, what's the meaning of life? Why not? I'm an intern. He's a super smart guy at the top of this company. And I asked him, what's the meaning of life? And he thought for a second, and he said, well, Bartek, actually, what he's learned is like life is a balance of three things. There's like your family and social, there's your health, and then there's your career. And the meaning of life is figuring out for you what is the right balancing between the three. And he says, for him, he's spent a lot of time on his career and his family, and maybe his health has suffered a little bit, but that was his choice, and that's what's brought him happiness to his life. And it was a really, really cool, really nice thing. And I've always kind of kept that in the back of my mind, because it's actually really, there is no one exact formula for happiness. You really have to kind of figure out what is the right balance between all the things at a given point in time in your life that's going to bring that happiness. And the cool thing was, the next day I showed up to work at Amazon, to the office, and I came in, and there was a book on my desk, and it was the meaning of life, I think, meaning of life or meaning of happiness by the Dalai Lama. So Rick had sent that, and he left me a little note. It's like, hey, if you're interested a bit more about the meaning of life, read this book. So that made a really big impact. I was quite young at the time, and it was an impact for many ways. But
this really resonates with me. So I would like to ask, feel free to not reply. What's your balance? Your ideal balance?
So right now I have two young kids. Olivia's 2 years old, Nico's 5 years old, and I'm running a startup, and then there's health and stuff. I think the one area that I've decided to deprioritize a lot is social. So of course I still see friends, but I try to always combine it with family stuff. And so I really focus on my startup, my family. Those are the top two priority. The next one down the list, I still try to do a bit of exercise here a few times a week. Nothing super long because I don't have time. Before kids, I would be doing long bike rides. Now I'm lucky if I do a 30-minute exercise here and there, but it's still there. I don't want to completely deprioritize. And I completely have taken the decision to deprioritize, social. I'm not taking trips to wherever. I'm not, going out on the weekends to parties or whatever it is. It's just, that's a conscious decision I made, and I think it's a very healthy balance for what I'm doing currently in my life.
Great answer. We are, everyone is trying to find this. I call it the center, not the balance. It's the same thing, with 5 different forces that try to drive you from one side and another. And what I found is that I'm personally happy if I have my center. That is very different for yours or the one of other people.
And the other thing is also try to find hacks. So try to find things, because your time is, you can't multiply time. That's kind of the limiting factor. But try to do things where you hit multiple birds with one stone, right? So if you can go on a vacation which means you're with another family. So you're spending social times with friends, but also you're spending time with your family. And it's a place where in the morning you can go for a swim, and do some exercise, right? Then you're doing multiple things at the same time. And try to optimize doing things in such a way where you're able to do a few things in parallel. That's also an important thing.
There is one book, I don't know if you already read it, it's called 4,000 Weeks.
No.
It's Time Management for Mortals.
Okay.
And it's a great book because it's totally against time hacks. So It's not about doing multiple things at the same time, but getting the right priority and stuff like that. But anyway, thank you very much, Bartek. We were diving too much into the spiritual and personal stuff. So I'm looking forward to meet you in Milan, and thank you very much.
Looking forward to. Thank you so much. Cheers. Bye bye.
Ciao ciao. Product Heroes è l'ecosistema per chi fa product management in Italia. Ogni anno organizziamo una delle più grandi product conference in Europa con oltre 1000 persone. Finora abbiamo aiutato più di 200.000 persone con master, guide, formazione in azienda, articoli e meetup. Se anche tu vuoi conoscere tutti i segreti del product management, iscriviti al nostro podcast. Scoprirai i consigli e le storie dei più grandi product leader e imparerai a costruire, lanciare e muovere le metriche del tuo prodotto. Ti aspetto su YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast. Per tutto il resto puoi trovarci su productheroes.it e ricordati sempre che dopo i tempi duri vengono sempre i tempi eroici.